Hi everyone, how's it going? Welcome back to Geography class, and I am here as usual, teacher Parichayasak. I'm glad to have you with us. Hopefully you have a very well-rested weekend. So today we are going to continue from what we left over in the last week. From last week we talked about the physical change that resulted in the climates of the Earth. So in this week, we are going to talk about the last step in physical change, which we already have the physical change that resulted in the Earth topography, Earth surface right now. Last week, we talked about the climate, and today, the final part, the Earth resource or natural resources. Shall we begin? Today, Earth physical change toward natural resources. Natural resource can be described into soil resource, water resource, vegetation and life resources. So these resources are basically influenced by the Earth's physical change. That's why you can see some places have different types of soil, some places have less amount of water than the others, or some places are in different vegetation or forests. And there are explanations for this. So shall we discover and let's go. So physical change from lithosphere, which is on the Earth's surface, the atmosphere. In our atmosphere, climates, hydrosphere, water cycles, and biosphere, which is the vegetation or life sphere, have generated natural resources and diversities of ecosystem, such as soil, water, forests, and minerals. So soil resources. Soil is a composite of small material from earth elements. Soil is including non-organic, organic, water, and air. As sometimes when we use our hand dig up in the soil, you can see the soil are in different shapes. Some are fine grained, some are hard, some are in big particles, some are wet, or some have space in between them, as you can see in this picture. So soil composite will be vary to the condition of the factors that are soil element. If the condition of factor that generate soil change, the process of soil generation and formation will be changed as well. Factors that control soil generation are source of soil, topography, climate, organic material, and time. So these processes will allow us to understand the differences of soil resources. That's why some places they are clay, some places they are sand, some places they are mixed between two. And this process and the factors will allow you to understand why they are different in different places. For the source of soil are the shale, the sandstone, limestone, granite, and basalt. So let's take a look. How are these different sources of soil, or sometimes you can say the parent materials of soil are different in each different types of rocks and stone. So basically, as you can see, soil is the composite of the earth's element, or in these basically mostly are from rocks and stone, right? So the first one is the shale. It provides clay when it disintegrated. So as you can see, it used to be in the formations of rocks. In this case, is shale, right? So when it disintegrated means it cracked down, it breaks down from from the rock state and into small particles, right? For the shell, it provides clay. When it disintegrated, it can be done by temperature. When the high in temperature, it also causes the rocks to expand. When it expanded, it cracks, right? Sometimes it were done by water. Why? How does water cause the disintegrated of rock? As you remember, many times around the earth, or basically just take a look at your house, right? So in the area that have the waters falls to the ground, if your house have a space that were uh, construct of cement floor, right? And when the waters falls down from the roof and dripped onto the surface, from time to time, this water will cause this integrated of the cement area, causing it to become a potholes. So that is how the waters are able to cause the rocks to disintegrate. So shell, when it's disintegrated, it provides clay, and this clay have good water absorption and holding ability. As you can see, when you go to the area, the mudded area, mud are basically clay, and these clay tend to hold water. So the area that have water on the surface when it rains are mostly clay. And also clay are good nutrition absorbing capability, which means in clay they are highly nutritious. The soil are fertile in the clay area because it's able to absorb many nutrients in its soil. Moving on. The sandstone. Sandstone provided sand when disintegrated, just like the name suggests, right? So these rocks, these stone rocks, sandstone, when it breaks down, it allows the sands to break down and become sands, as we see in many places. And this can be seen like on the beach, like if you ever been to Grand Canyon, those areas used to be the ocean floor, right? So when the earth crust lift up, right? So that area were being above the water level, and it's become dry, and from time to time it breaks down, and these rocks breaks down into sands and get carried by wind and deposit in many places around the earth. So sands can be both in gritty and fine-grained sands, which means it can either vary like small rocks, subsands, or very fine like you find on the beach. So this sand not absorbing water and nutrition. It have no capability in absorbing any water. As you can see, when you pour the waters into the sand surface, the water tend to goes down between sands. Or in the sands area, they are unlikely to hold water, so you are likely not to find any water sources in the sand area. Except for the beach, those, of course, the oceans, the sediment of many sands and rocks underneath. So, like I said, water will find the space to stay. But how the sand in the ocean floor are able to hold the water? Because underneath the sand, it's basically the earth crust and the mixture of many types of rocks, right? So when the water go through the sand until it hits and unable to go down further because of the solid part of the rock and stone, when it fill up in the sand, that it's able to go up and hold the water. That's why some sand area are able to hold water, because underneath it's supposed to be a solid rocks, right? So for example, if you go into the ocean or the beach, right, you go into the shallow areas of water. When you stand on the sand, your feet tend to be buried and go deeper into sand because there are water within the space between sands, right? So when you weight pushing up, sands will get carried over by the waters, making your feet go deeper and buried by the sand. Next is limestone. So limestone provides fine-grained soil when it is integrated. It has high calcium, and if the area where dolomite limestone will be magnesium included in its nutrition. So limestone, as you can see in high calcium, don't have to look further, just look into your mouth, right? Every time when there are deposit of calcium from your teeth, and many things when you eat, they're likely to have a limestone generated in between your teeth, right? And that is cause of the deposit of calcium. And limestone were very high in calcium. And if it's a dolomite limestone, it will also include magnesium. So if you try to look for the magnesium resource, just search for dolomite limestones. All right, let's moving on. Now for granite, it provides clay and sand when it disintegrated. As you can see in this picture, they are mixture of many material when it's buried, right? So when it disintegrated, it's allowed to have different types of soil like clay and sand. So quartz will become sand and the feldspar will become clay. The types of soil will depend on the sediment deposit, okay? So what do you mean by the sediment deposit? So again, if you remember back when we early start about the change, the physical change that caused the different types of topography. When these rocks disintegrated, sometimes it's got transferred this small particle that it disintegrated to new areas, either by wind or water or gravity pull, right? So when it's pulled to the new area, that it caused the deposition of this particle to become different types of terrain. So when the granite breaks down, the area that near the granite site will be sand. For further around the granite area from sand out, there will be the combines of clay and sand. And then when it goes down to the plain terrain or the flat terrain area, there will be clay. So if you are near the granite source, you will likely to find sand. Go out further, there will be a mixture of sands and clay, and then go to the flat area that these integrations of granite are able to deposit. There will be clay in the flat area. Now for the basalt. So basalt is basically what we call like the volcanic rocks, right? It's because when the magma that released into lava, it's cooled down, it forms into basalt rocks. So it provides black clay when it disintegrated, and when the time goes by, later it will change into brown color, and furthermore it will become red color, or what we know as red clay respectively. So clay from basalt are extremely sticky during the rain season and extremely dry and crack in drought season. So if you found a clay that are in red color, you likely know it from basalt in red or brown or black, right? So but in Thailand we are more likely to see many browns and red clay, as explaining that in Thailand used to be a volcano but now inactive, right? Long times ago, and these inactive volcanoes once were caused the volcanic eruptions, and these cooled down lava become break down into black clay, and by the times go by it become brown and then red. That's why you can see many red clay around the countries, and that red clay are extremely sticky and slippery. In the area that have red clays during the rainfalls, it's required 4x4 vehicle to go past the area because the terrain is so sticky. Even walk by is so hard to go. Motorcycles sometimes cannot go through, and not even mention cars. So that's how sticky of this clay can be during the rainfalls. But again, when it dries, it will become really, really crack into many cracks of area. Okay, so let's moving on. Now we talk about the topography that cause the difference of soil generation and soil formations. So earlier we talked about its source or its parent material that allows us to have different types of soil, right? So for topography, topography is influencing the soil generation and formation process. The terrain and gravity differences will allow the soil to form differently. So for the plain and or flat area, the deposit of sediment from small particles and organic material. So what does this mean? It means that in this area I tend to have very, very fertile soil, right? Because it would deposit of many sediment that were carried over by either mostly water, some were by wind from the higher elevation areas. When those rocks disintegrated and get carried over, it tends to deposit in the plain or flat area. And the reason is because in the plain or flat area, the elevation differences are slightly less and it tends to level. So when it's level, there are no gravitation pulls toward lower area because the area are quite level. So it will pull deep into the ground, right? Which means it's allowed these particles to settle and sediment into the plain area. And mostly it makes a small particles, so it's tend to be fine types of soil and the organic material that were decomposed, making this area very, very fertile. Next topography is the hill. The hill have high elevation area, so the soil surface are easily get transfers. Like I said earlier, so in the high elevation area have different types of elevation drops. So when the elevation drops, which mean all the things will pull out toward gravity to the center of the earth, right? It will go to the lower elevations. That's causing many of the soil surface to be transferred down to the lower elevations and stop at the plain area. For the mountain slope, the soil surface are thin and easily get transferred same as the hill, but the mountain slope are slightly high change in elevation than the hills. So the hills will go slope down really slowly, but in the mountain slope it goes rapidly from different elevations. That's why it's have thinner and easier to get transfer in terms of the soil surface. Now we talk about the mountain range, which is even higher in terms of soil transfer. So it has less soil transformation or even no soil transformation at all because in the mountain range, especially in the mountaintop, there are so many factors that influence in change. Like on the mountaintop, it usually be ice on the glacier on top because of a high elevation come with lower air density causing the lower temperature, right? So with these lower temperatures allow the water to get frozen and become ice. And when the temperature increase in different seasons, it's allowed this ice to melt. So when the ice melt, it brought down all the soils and disintegrations of rocks on the top, right? With the help of gravity, pull everything's down. So there less soil formation on the top and pull toward the lower elevation. And again, it can sometimes deposit on the way down or falls down to the flat area and stop. Now, the highlands. What about the highlands different from the mountain range? So basically, highland are the high elevated flat area. So highland are most likely to be just like the plain or flat area, right? Even though it just have this different in terms of elevation, but the highlands tend to have a very level in terms of elevation in the high elevated area. So the soil formation are like the plain area, just no difference because in the highland underneath the soil layers there were rocks, there were foundations that are able to hold it in place, and it's not likely to cause any disintegrations of soil and get carried over to the other area. All right, this is how the topography play an important role in causing a different types of soil in different types of area. And the key factor is the elevations and gravitation pull. Okay, higher gravitations with really high change in higher elevation with really high change in elevation will have slightly soil formations, and the soil formation are slightly more on the flat and plain area. Okay. Now for the climates. Climates also influence the soil formation. Humidity, rainfall, and temperature all cause different soil generation and formations. Just we already talked about in the earlier, but we're going to go deeper how it's different. So high rainfalls and temperature area, or we can say the tropical zones, is high in mineral and rock disintegration, resulting in thick layers of soil formation. Why? The reason is because in these high rainfall areas with high temperature, right? So with high temperature area tend to have high rainfall if it have lots of water source and humidity. So the water will evaporate and goes into terms of gases or the water vapor in the air, right? With these, when it's formed into a big cloud, and then when its weight are getting heavier and heavier and hit with the differences in temperature, it's allowed these vapors to group up into water and drop down on the land. So when the waters drop down, it becomes rainfalls, right? So when the rainfalls are high and heavy, it tends to cause lots of disintegration of mineral and rocks. Just like I explained about how the water from the roof able to disintegrate the cement floor. So this is basically the same precision. So these high rainfall and temperature area resulting in thick layers of soil formation because those lots of soil is disintegrated and then able to get carried over and deposit. Next is dry and high temperature area, or arid or dry zone is high in water evaporation, causing the soil to dry and crack. Mostly salt mix can cause the alkali soil, right? So, for example, in the desert area, there are not much of water source and humidity. So, whatever the water source are there, the heat in terms of the climates will evaporate all this water and causing them to extremely dry and crack, just like in the picture suggests over here, right? And in some area, there was salt mixed in the layers, causing the what we call din kim, right? So even though you are able to find a water source, sometimes it's not able or suitable to grow some types of plantations. But what it likes is salty or alkali soil is the coconut. Coconut are very well grown into the area with alkaline soil, right? So if sometimes your parents or you would like to grow coconuts and the coconut is not really grown that well, maybe just add a little bit of salt around the coconuts will help it to grow better. So the area with the cold and humid area, they are usually ice under the soil layer, the soil will get transferred when the ice melt, right? So the soil will on top of the ice with the increase of temperature causing the ice underneath to melt. This soil will get carried over when the ice melt into water, into liquid. So when the liquid makes its way to the lower elevations, find new space, it will carry the soil on top of it, go with it as well, causing many soil integration and cause the deposit in the lower area. As you can see from the weeks ago when we talked about how the ice glacier will melt and carry over the soil and deposit in the new area, causing the new forms of lands, right? Next is the rain and dry area. High develop of soil in deeper layer because this area, um, when it rain and dry, what it does is there not much of the soil development on top, but this water will able to go down and disintegrated rocks underneath, causing uh, the development of soil in the deeper layer. Uh, just not to be confused, the rain and dry area are not like dry and high temperature area. Rain and dry area are basically like the raining season and summer season or dry seasons, right? So it will change in terms of the developments of soil in different types of seasons. So when it was rain, the waters are able to uh, the water are able to breaks down the soil and then go through the layers of soil, right? Carry causing the deeper development in the soil layers. When it dries, again, it just becomes dry on the top surface and cracks. So this is how it's caused high development of soil in the deeper layer. Okay, let's moving on. Now we talk about the organic material or what we know as the organic matters. So organic material is part of soil element. Each climate resulting in different organic materials. So as you can see, some area have different types of material because of the different climates. Some were able to, some life, some plantation, some vegetation are able to survive in the warm and high humidity uh, climates. Some were able to survive in the cold and freezing climates, right? So that caused the organic material to be different because of the life that survive in that areas are different. And the reason why the life and the organic material are different because um, life is basically organic, right? And when we the life ended, it will be decomposed and disintegrated into fertilized or into parts of soil. Like the phrase when you say that we are born from earth and then we go back from earth when we die, right? เกิดจากดินก็กลับสู่ดิน right? So area with high amount of and slow decomposed organic materials are very fertile soil like in warm climates area. So as you can see in the warm climates area tend to have the higher fertile soil, unlike the area with the very freezing climates or the area with dry climates like the desert. So the insects, some animals, insects and worms also provide the soil mixture such as ants, earthworm, and termites. These how does it cause the soil mixture? Like the word when your teacher back from primary school will tell you how the earthworm ไส้เดือนช่วยพรวนดิน right? Or same as the ants because these animals were within the soil or the earth, right? Ants also created its nest underneath the soil, and when it's moved around, it carried the soil away to build a nest that caused the soil to mix from uh, the upper surface and the lower surface, same as the earthworm. So the earthworm, it's consumes basically the nutrients, and then when it release its manure, this manure become the fertilizer for the soil, causing this area to be very, very well mixture and fertile. So the different level of decompose of organic material will also result in different conditions of soils. The soil that have high levels of decompose will have high fertile soil, right? So basically, if you go to the graveyard, especially a Muslim graveyard or Christian graveyard, that they bury the bodies in underneath the ground. These underneath the ground, the bodies will decompose, right, and disintegrate and were part of the earth or the soil, causing them to have very high fertile. It becomes the fertilizer for the soil in that area. For Muslim people, um, when their family members or when themselves die, right, they will get buried underneath the ground. And unlike the Christian tend to bury in the coffin, but for Muslim, they're not really buried in coffin. They just have the wood part, the wood pallet, uh, building the structure in order to put the bodies and then pour down the soil. So when the bodies decompose, much better to the bodies are much better to disintegrate to be part of the soil. And mostly will decorate the graveyard with many trees. So the better the tree grows, you know that this person are well rested. And there are the scientific way to explain how the trees are able to grow with that quick because of the fertile soil from the body that were decomposes. So it's actually very, very beneficial to the nature. All right, let's moving on. So now we talk about the times. Times also a very important factors. So the time is the factor that influences the soil generation and formation. The process of soil formation takes time and vary in different periods of disintegration, transfer, and deposition. Basically, with different times period, we'll have different types of formations of the soil, right? So in this case, I was able to uh, classify into three different phases to be easily understand of how the soil generations and formations were processed. So the phase one, the formations of the sea horizon, which is the soil source of the parent material, it can disintegrate from rocks from being and or being transferred, right? So basically, this rock was staying still and it got disintegrated by temperature, by rainfalls, the water drips down, causing the rocks to disintegrate, or by chemical reactions, or even by humans, plants, and animals, right? So when it's disintegrated, or sometimes it can be transferred from the other area and deposit. This is the first layer, the sea horizons, right? The D horizon in the picture shown here is the bedrock, which is the foundation of the soil structure, right? So the first one, the deepest of the soil is the sea horizon. So there are little to no plant or animal life because it's mostly really mixed with rocks. Then it comes to the phase two. So the phase two, the development of the soil surface from the decomposed of plants or animal corpse, resulting in high humus that mostly organic material and become the O horizon or organic material surface, right? Which is on the top, right? On the very top or on the surface. As you can see in the picture, when it's quite the humus, those are the old horizons where the plants, where the animals lives, right? Then the phase 3, development of deeper soil layer from absorbing or transfers the particle, making some C horizons to break down and change into B horizons. And O horizon mixing with the organic material will become A horizons, or what we call the topsoil, right? We have topsoil, subsoil, and weathered rock fragment, or the lower or deeper, or let's say the lower soil, and then we have the bedrock, right? So that is the soil layer. Or take a look at this picture. However, this picture they created in the phase into 4 phase, right? But basically the phase 1 and 2 are the phase 1 that I talked earlier. So just take a look in this picture. As you can see, when the rocks disintegrated, right, it it will create uh, the 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 sea horizons, and this sea horizon is basically the soil that will break down from rocks mixed with rocks, compared to the bedrock which are solid rock that is not disintegrated just yet. So when it comes to the third phase, there were A horizons happening, and then on the phase 3, there were B horizons happen from the transfers of particles from the C horizon that further breaks down, and also the A horizons from the organic material mixing together. Okay, so this is how the time or the phase or the period that cause the different types of soil development. The longer it takes, the more complete the soil formation will be. Now we talk about the water resources, right? Earlier we finished about the soil resource. Now just take a look at the water resources. So water resource, there are so many types of water resource, types of factors that resulted in water resource. Take ice melting for example. Ice melting can be like glacier in the Earth's pole or the glacier and ice on the mountaintop. Right. For the glacier in the North Pole, it will melt when the temperature increases. Some melt down to liquid, some evaporated into atmosphere and falls down into rain and begin the water cycle, right? But the differences between the glacier in the mountain and the glacier at the Earth's pole, like the North and the South Pole, this glacier in the North and South Pole, when it melts, the water or the liquid goes into the ocean, and that causing the lowering of salt in the ocean and the rising of the sea level, right? So sometimes it's if the area that were nearby the glacier, sometimes it can also receive the water resource from the meltdown glacier, but mostly the iceberg or the glacier in the Earth's pole will melt down into the ocean, and that causing the concern of sea level rising. Next is the glacier and ice on the mountain, which will melt when the temperature increases and fall to the lower elevations, becoming the source of many rivers and streams, like the Mekong River, right? แม่น้ำ Mekong, right? Which is come from, all the way from China to Thailand. And the source of water are from the ice glacier on the mountaintop. When it melts, it's causing the water to falls down to the lower elevations and get carried on uh, into terms of rivers and streams, as you can see in this picture. And the reason that these rivers are able to have mostly almost unlimited source because um, when it melts down, however, the water vapors in the air also got frozen in the high elevation and it's formed ice on the mountaintop. So basically, the ice cycles, it's melt down and then it falls down to freezing into ice again and then it melts down, allowing to have the water resource for all year long and from time to time. And some of these, when it's melt down into the rivers and stream and it becomes our water sources, these water sources also able to evaporate it into atmosphere and begin the water cycle. And again, just like I explained earlier, this water cycle, it's either falls down into the surface, into water resource around the area, or it can also get carried over into the high elevation, like in the mountain area, and then got frozen and fall into snow and form onto the top of the mountain into ice and glacier, and then again got melt down and falls down to begin this water cycles and the cryo or ice cycle. Okay, next is the high precipitation in some area. So the precipitation is part of the water cycle, right? So when the waters got evaporate, it's go into terms of vapor. When the vapor got formed into heavy particles into water, it falls down again onto the ground, causing the water cycles. However, in some area, sometimes it causes the different precipitation, causing them to have the different amounts of water source, right? For in this case, we talk about the increase of Earth's temperature, which can cause different precipitation in different areas. As you can see on the picture, this is the example of the El Nino and La Nina. So El Nino caused South America to have high rainfalls, many storms, heavy rains, and then it caused drought in Southeast Asia, right? So basically, it's supposed to be equally rainfalls in the cycle from the South and South America and Southeast Asia, right, into cycle by the wind system of the earth and the water current of the ocean. However, there are different change when the temperature increase, causing the change in water current, and when the water current change, it causes the wind to change in terms of humidity and the temperature change from either water and the temperature of the air, and that cause the system that normally function in the cycle to change. When it change for El Nino, it caused again South America to have high rainfall and the drought in Southeast Asia. But for La Nina, it caused different or the opposite effect. Now the Southeast Asia have heavy rainfalls, and then in South America it have drought. So this causing change in water resources regularly, because during now we are facing the problems of climate change. Some people or some scientists, they see that it's a normal phenomena, but with many academic scientists also agree that the climate change is it's basically normal, but it's increased too high in terms of rates of increased temperature due to the intervention of human activity that caused this change to rapid. And when the changes are rapid, what happens is it's corrupt the climate system of the earth, to causing now we have many severe weather change, storms, high heavy rains, hurricanes, tornadoes in many places. Some places that never been snowfall before, now they have snow. Some places there used to be lots of rainfalls and very high in water resource become drought. That is done by the climate change, and again can be explained by these phenomena, the El Nino and the La Nina. All right. Now we talk about the vegetation resources. So the physical change resulting in change in vegetation and life in the ecosystem. So there were slow change that allow life and vegetation to slowly adapt and develop to their environment. That this is basically a normal in nature, right? So when everything changed, everything developed little by little to make it suitable and surviving in the change of environment. However, sometimes there were changes that are rapid and fast, like the change that caused by the natural phenomena like drought, volcanic eruption, earthquake, tsunami, wildfire, are all fast change, which resulting in change in physical environment and destroy of life, right? So, for example, the volcanic eruptions release of magma into lava. These lava, or the liquid burning rocks, right? When it's moving through its path, it destroys everything that on its path. And then when it's cooled down, it will become a new terrain, like rock terrain or higher terrain, because of these lava cooled down and deposit into the different types of terrain, causing change in physical and change in environment, and also destroy the life that were in the way. Some animals die, some plants were died, and with this change in environment and with its being changed and destroyed, it also will cause the succession. Cause the succession. Which this succession will allow all of this that were destroyed to redevelop again, but it takes time, like almost hundreds of years in terms of succession. And the succession can be categorized into the primary succession and the secondary succession to explain the slow change and the fast change. So let's take a look. So the primary succession right here, as you see in the picture, right, is basically this is the slow change from the bare rocks. Then, when it's disintegrated with the different types of climates or force that done by the earth, the first types of plants or vegetation are the lichens and moss that will grow from uh, rocks, cracks area. This is the beginning of the pioneer stage, right? So when the times goes by, then the small annual plants and lichens were able to grow. As you can see, the weeds, the grass that were able to grow from the cracks of the rocks, and also these rocks were disintegrated and sediment into the thin layers of soil, and that's why all these small plants and lichens are able to survive in this stage. And then the times go by, the soil will become thicker. They are perennial herbs and grass are able to grow, and the longer the times go by, the thicker of the soil formation and sediments allow the bigger plants like grasses, shrubs, shaded intolerant trees to able to grow. And when it's reached it what's so called this stage is the intermediate stage. When it reached what's so called the climax community, which is when the environment are able to develop in full potential, in basically it's complete in terms of development, it will be having like the shade tolerant trees, the really big trees grows in the area, and the soil formation are basically complete into the O horizon, A horizon, B, C, and D horizons, right? This is what we mentioned about the climax community. Now, this primary succession take hundreds of years to do so. So just imagine if we destroy all this nature that were developed for over hundreds of years, like when man's logging the forest or rechanging the shape of the surface for human purpose. But when we are going to see the other area to change into this uh, succession, it takes hundreds of years, and you're likely to die before it's able to do so. And therefore, the destruction of nature are now being protected to serve what the nature have developed, and we might not able to see or recover from it again. This can cause the extinction of many animals alive, especially men, until the nature are able to recover. So it may not be in time of succession for many life to survive. Now we talk about a secondary succession, right? So basically, secondary succession is the succession that caused from the primarily the slow change, which is what happened normally in the nature. But the second succession is when it have to success all of this all over again from the destruction in terms of environment, either it's from natural phenomena or human destruction. For example, in this case, talk about the wildfire, right? So when the wildfire causing the destruction of the plants and animal life in the area, so it's reset to zeros again until the first 2 years, the annual plants like lichens, moss, and small grasses are able to grow, and then 3 to 4 years, there are grasses, perennials growing, and in 5 to 150 years, there are grass, shrubs, pines, young oaks, hickory, or the bigger trees are able to grow in these 5 to 150 years. And then 150 years or more, then it will able to reach the climax communities again, like the major oaks and hickory forests. These time periods also shows how the development takes times and how much the human need to be careful for the nature that we are living in, that not to destroy, because it's really hard to recover until it's able to reach its climax community again. And this climax community where we mostly uh, uh, take our resource, especially we cutting down those trees because the trees are so well developed, it's high in values, and we go to cut it down. And we have to wait 150 years or more to let it recover in terms of climax community again. And that's why all life are extinct or being the beginning of extinction by humans. Very, very sad. So therefore, I would leave it to you that all these resources takes time and really hard to recover or generate it. So we must taking care of what we have today before we will extinct by our hands. All right, that's it for today. Q&A time now. Any questions, suggestion, or discussion, please leave it in the Q&A box and we will talk about it, and also I will provide the time for you to do your assignment of today. And as usual, thank you for coming to class and have a wonderful day. I'm really glad to have you in my class, and all of you are bright students, so keep up the good work. See you again next time.